You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, the podcast where I speak to bands and musicians about what they've got up to in their lives, basically, the jobs they've worked, the small side hustles they've done to make it what it is, and filling in the gaps in between. I've got Alicia Bognanno from Bully here. Her new album, SUGAREGG, is out this Friday. It's a rager. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Signature Brew has been brewing beers since 2011. They've brewed beers for the likes of Mastodon and Idols, Mogwai even. And you can get 10% off their website, signaturebrew.co.uk. You can get 10% off everything they sell, including the pub in a box thing that they do, which I can attest to is absolutely fantastic. So if you go to checkout and type in 101 podcast there, that's all capital letters, then you'll get your money's worth. All right, thanks for listening. Here is Alicia from Bully. Don't forget to rate and subscribe. Cheers.
Cool.
So, I mean, the new record sounds, so good.
Thanks.
Where to start? It's such a killer single.
Hell yeah, thank you.
Were there any other singles in the running there for the first one?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the obvious first one from management and the label perspective. And I don't really give a shit about what they want to do with singles. I think I do, but then I realized like if I were to go my direction, it would not work in my favor.
How do you sort of generally see your relationship with that sort of professional side of being a musician?
Well, I'm really lucky because I just get to work with really great people. Like everybody at Sub Pop is awesome. They're people that I would hang out with outside of work if I lived in Seattle. And I think that's always a good sign. And then my manager, I've been with him for like 6 years now since Bully started. So
wow.
He's just, I mean, I trust him and he's always has my best interest at heart. And he's, I'm pretty bad with business stuff and he definitely keeps me on track and is great. So yeah, I mean, I'm just lucky because I get to work with people that I love, that I know are looking out for me. It'd probably be different if I wasn't in that situation, but since that is my situation, it's pretty good. I'm very happy with it.
You don't get to choose that stuff sometimes, right?
No, well, I mean, kind of, but I've heard nightmare situations with labels and stuff. Or, like the horror story of them making you like scratching a record or shelving it and like making you work with people you don't want to work and stuff like that, or like remixing it a way you don't want to. And I've knock on table have never had to deal with that. So
from a fan's point of view, Sub Pop seem pretty chilled out about everything.
Yeah, they're the best. They're great.
And so having a manager from the start, was he a friend? How did you connect with him?
No, I mean, it wasn't from the start. It was after we got momentum going, but we were getting going and playing shows and stuff. And then when there was buzz around us, he was came out to a show with a few other of his friends in the industry. He lives in Austin, and he had been in Nashville and then had reached out to me about working together. And I was resistant to work with anybody until I really, really felt like I needed to, or I couldn't handle it. So I kind of put it off for a while, and he stayed persistent. And eventually I was like, okay, let's do it. And now I'm like, thank God, like I need him more than he needs me for sure.
It's a strange relationship. At least it seems like one, just having a manager in general, because obviously it's, it's art. It comes from the heart. And yet you need to have this kind of, structure, this sensibility about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think in my situation, it's nice and reassuring because I know that he wanted to work with me before, he didn't gain anything from like pulling me up, so
right.
It's just cool to keep that in mind. But yeah, he's great.
When you were sort of, getting that buzz in those early days, can you sort of paint me a picture of your life around that time? Were you working at the time?
Yeah. So I was running, I was doing, this is kind of crazy, but I was babysitting like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. And then I would go home and then run sound from like 6 p.m. to midnight. And then I was writing on my days off or in between, but I've had a job since I was like 14. So I was definitely used to the hustle, but it was any time that I had, I would focus on bully. And then that whole process of like booking shows and getting together merch and scraping together enough money to press some 7 inches and shipping them ourselves, and like routing tours, just like blindly emailing venues and bands and seeing if we can open up. And then whenever I would route the tours, I would break down how long the drives were and then figure out how much gas it would be and the costs and which cities we had friends, which cities we'd have to like find a place to stay or get like a motel or something. And so that was kind of like all the bully groundwork. And then, just babysitting and running sound. And also I was interning at a studio called Battle Tapes.
Did you have like this kind of end goal, looking back on that time?
Yeah, I mean, I studied audio engineering in college and started running sound during my last semester. So that was kind of like, really the goal was just to have any sort of job in the field, whether it was engineering or playing, just seemed like a dream in itself because it's not the easiest to come across. So, right. I mean, being in a band and having a band as my career was the end goal, but I never thought that it was possible growing up in like Rosemont, Minnesota, where nobody even played music. It was like, I still every day am just wondering how the hell I ended up in Tennessee, and feel really lucky to be able to do what I could do, because it seemed just like such a reach at the time. But I obviously thought that it was possible, or I wouldn't have worked so hard to do it. I just didn't. It seemed like it would never happen.
And Nashville, was that sort of the clear destination for you?
No. So I only ended up here because in high school, I was a really bad student and only had like one class that I did well in. I went to a public school, but in your senior year, they would let you take elective classes at it was the school on the zoo campus. It was literally in a zoo, and they had an engineering class there. And so I would commute there for one of my classes. And I mean, and I say engineering, but I mean, it's very loose. They're pretty much just like, this is Pro Tools, this is Logic, this is GarageBand, here's a microphone. And my teacher in that class, I wasn't going to go to college because I didn't have anything that I wanted to study. And I was kind of butting heads with my dad because I wanted to go to get just like a 2 years Pro Tools certificate in a school in Minneapolis. And he was kind of like, no, what are you talking? Like, you can't study music. Like, what's happening? That's not a thing. And he was like, okay, if you find like a place that has a 4-year major, I'm cool with it. And so my teacher found me MTSU, which you can get a bachelor's of science in audio engineering. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Tennessee. And then I just showed up in Tennessee.
Got the loophole into Tennessee. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a funny thing to study because, like anything that's, I guess journalism's another one where, you can go to school to learn about it, but there is so much room for you to just do your own work,
Yeah.
Like do your own groundwork. I mean, did you kind of have that ride or die mentality from the start?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, my goal, like I just remember I was thinking about this the other day because I had a conversation with Bob Mold yesterday for the Talk House podcast.
Very fucking cool.
We never really talked directly about Minnesota because I had a lot of other questions that I wanted to know about. But I had read his book and he was kind of talking about, just like wanting to get out of where he grew up. He grew up in Malone, New York. I think I pronounced that right. But my whole experience with Rosemont, Minnesota was just like, my goal was just to like turn 18 and get out. It was just like, how quickly can I get out? And so I think having that like just fire inside of you kind of sets you up to be like, okay, what else do I need to do? Like, how else? Like, I've already left. This is the only thing I want to do. How can I make it happen? But I think that a lot of that, I still feel like so much of my work ethic is because of shitty jobs that I had like when I was young and from always working. And I think about it all the time because it just taught me so much that like when I went to school and had to hustle, I had already kind of knew how in other ways.
Was that in the way that you were finding out what you didn't want to do.
Yeah, definitely. But I think just in general, knowing like, you know, when you have a job, even if you're like serving or something, it's about like kind of finding work for yourself, like all the little things you can do to keep yourself busy instead of not having to be told. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like with that in the back of your mind, you can apply that to so many other things. And
For real, I think bar works like that because there's no time you should be lounging around. You can
yeah,
always do something.
yeah, totally. You could be like cutting lemons or rolling silverware, and then you can get out faster at the end of the night. Like, it's just, I don't know. I felt like I could apply that to it. But really, all I wanted to do was music. And so I was really, really driven.
Yeah. I think so many decisions in music are sensitive in the way that the ramifications of saying yes to this gig or no to that gig could come up to be of like some importance.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you kind of have to, I don't know, kind of play your cards right. Does that make sense? And have you had to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I first had to make the decisions of who to go with for management or who to go with for a booking agent or all those kind of big decisions that you really have no idea which is the right way to go because you've had no experience doing them before. It's like you think so much about, but really, I think, and I don't know because it's hard to say now, but I think that if you make the wrong choice, it comes apparent very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and with art too, so much of it is just like everybody kind of being like, you should play this because you're lucky you have the opportunity to, and you know what, you shouldn't even be asking me about payment because you're just so lucky that you get the opportunity to do this. And I think that's like a lot of the way with up and coming artists and photographers too, where it's like they're so undervalued because people make them think like they're so lucky to even have that experience, to have that showcase or whatever. And I think that part of it is definitely like it comes to a point where you have to pick, you're like, well, does this really make sense for me to do? Or is playing this gig with no payment, is the exposure going to weigh out to me, you know, putting in all this work and all this effort and pretty much saying, you know, that's okay, I'm not worth a payment for it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it feels like there is that kind of, oh, I'm lucky, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the start of the hurdles, it seems. I mean, what other big hurdles have you sort of, you know, had to come over?
I would say that kind of ties into what a really big hurdle is. It's just like knowing my worth, which is why my manager, Ryan, plays such a big role because he will be able to see something and be like, no, that is not enough. Like you are worth more than that. Like you're not going to take that. That is not, you know, that's not an okay rate for you to do whatever it is. And if it were up to me, I'd be like, oh, sure. You know what? I'll do it. And I'll just waive the fee too. Like it's just, that is still something that I struggle with, but I'm getting better now at. But I think like imposter syndrome and stuff kind of leaves you to think that you're always like tricking somebody, like, oh, I got this much money for doing this. Oh my gosh, I hope they don't like find out that really I suck. It's like, no, it's okay. You work hard and you're talented and you need to learn how to like own that at times. But that's a difficult thing to do. And kind of struggling with that is, yeah, I don't know. One of the obstacles as far as like picking what to do and being cautious of what choices you make and which gigs you accept and stuff is just to kind of keep in mind what your value is or yeah.
And it's hard to see your value from the outside. I mean, like it's pretty narcissistic, you know, to look at yourself like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And ideally, you don't want to live your life thinking that way, you know?
No, for sure. But it's crazy because it's like, if I can't see that, I mean, I know how much I practice and I still can barely see that. It's just like, it's such a weird thing. But something that I try and keep in mind.
When did things start changing? When did things start going, you know, prioritizing Bully over everything else?
I started touring and then was still coming back and running sound and picking up babysitting jobs for a while until we signed with a a subsidiary on Columbia for the first record. And then we were just pretty much on tour for a year straight. So I stopped working at the Stone Fox. We went on the road, and all of us in that lineup had given up our rent leases at some point. So I remember there was a time when we were touring, we just had our stuff in storage, and then we were home just so sparse that Stuart and I would rent like an Airbnb for a week that we were home. So we didn't have to pay rent all that time when we were gone. And Clay lived with us for a while where he wasn't paying rent. And then Reese also did the same, just gave up his lease because we were all on the road so much. So we kind of switched out that payment with the money that we made, or just, we're like, let's try and not worry about rent and be gone so much that we don't really need to, and we'll deal with where we're going to stay when we get in town. So that was kind of like a juggling act of that for the first year or so. But then after, for the first year of being signed and putting out that record, but then pretty much after that, I think there was still times when I was picking up like a few things here and there. But then it switched over to just fully Bully for the most part. I've been primarily doing Bully for the past 5 years, and I've done some engineering stuff on the side, which I really love, and I want to continue to do. But my babysitting days for now are over, and my running live sound days are over. But engineering stuff is really the only side job that I have, and that's just for fun.
Have you got better at sort of dealing with like, has it been hard dealing with that instability of being, because I guess there is a stability of being on the road, but even that is quite like a sensitive place to be.
Yeah.
Because things can fall through when the van breaks down, or you know what I mean? It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot for something to change a day.
Well, not only that, but you're like also counting on merch money. Like you're counting on your merch sales to go to like sell X amount of merch so that, you guys can all eat that week and like be okay. Right. And everyone can get $100 in their pocket or something. But I mean, at the time, none of us had been in a position where we were actually making like real adult money anyway. So we didn't really have much to lose. It wasn't like we were all like super comfortable and then we were taking a risk. It was like we were all living week to week anyway, or paycheck to paycheck anyway before that. So it was kind of just like, why not go all in? But yeah, I mean, it's wild.
It must be sort of like quite a lot of responsibility for you as the songwriter and the band's leader. Like, do you kind of do you fit into that role?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think then it was more when Stuart and I had started, he had played drums and I had played guitar and wrote the stuff. And then Reese and Clay, who did the majority of tour, weren't in it from the very start. They were kind of in it later. And none of them are in it now. Now it's very much just me. But I think at the time, I was the youngest of all of them by a pretty good amount, except for Reese. But like, I think Clay was like 6 years older than me. Stuart was 5, and they had all had experience touring before. So they were definitely a lot more of like, this is what we should do. This is like kind of how you go about it. And I was just like taking note and then doing it, which is now my role is totally different. But getting started, I had a lot of help from them. And so it wasn't really like, it was definitely kind of, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like, it's hard to explain, but yeah, Stuart helped me a ton. I felt like as far as the booking and like getting the van going and what we should pack and stuff, those responsibilities were Stuart and I split equally. It wasn't just me figuring everything out. And that was really helpful. I definitely needed that at the time. It was really nice that they had that experience.
Right. And sort of transitioning from being the youngest to then kind of growing up, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
That's something you need to kind of like grab the horns by, right? And be like, this is my responsibility.
Yeah. It's crazy to think of just, man, doing that. I was 23 when Bully started.
Right.
And hadn't been to any of those places. Like I've pretty much been everywhere that I've been. The first time I had been there was because of tour for most places everywhere. And so it's just wild to think about. All of a sudden it was just like, all right, here's every city. But even the little things that they knew, like, okay, this is the good vegetarian place to go, or this is the good record shop that we should go to, or I stayed at this dude's house when we toured with our other bands. Like even those little things that they knew were super helpful, because that's kind of what it's all about.
Totally. And do you think will you transform those kind of skills that you've made into engineering? Because I guess engineering is something where it's so communicative and based on people's relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's always, a lot of it is like picking your battles. A lot of tours, picking your battles, not from the start, but from the start. It's like, what is worthy of me getting stressed out about, and what just doesn't matter. And I think some of that, and a lot of it is just about ego too. And recording and stuff, it's like, it's okay to like not have someone want to go. I mean, I'm now just opening up the time to be able to like dig more into producing other people's projects and stuff. But even when I'm like, have recorded a few bands at my house and stuff, I just kind of sit back and do it and try and read like if they're open to a suggestion or if they're not, and really just reading like the situation in the room in the same way that you kind of do in the van has its parallels.
Right. You can't be taught that stuff.
No.
You kind of got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so producing bands is like, are people commissioning you, now when you're back from tour? I mean, not now during COVID, but is that something that you've been doing?
No, not since since the first record. This is the first record. This current record is all that the release of it is all that I've been working on. But the goal is, once this is out and stuff, to start digging into producing other people's projects and stuff. So we'll see. I've never really been in a place where I was like 100% sure that that's kind of where I wanted to put a significant amount of my focus in as I am now, because just having time at home and stuff has made me realize that it would be cool to do other things like that and try and figure out other ways where I can be working while I can't be on the road.
Right. And
so that's still kind of TBD, but in the works.
Do you adapt to home life quite well?
Yeah. I mean, I work from home every day anyway with Bully. It's just me at my computer, and I'm either writing or like figuring out merch stuff or proofreading the bio or whatever, all that bullshit that you do with releasing a record. And I stopped drinking like 9 months ago. So even before COVID, I was just at home all the time anyway, because I wasn't really able to go out. And I would see like a few of my friends, but I stay in most of the time anyway. I feel better at home. So it's only really recently start to sink in. Like when COVID first happened, I was like, this is a bummer, but it's not really much different. It's not really life altering for me. And then it kind of kept going. And recently I've been like, wow, I don't even know when I'm going to be able to tour next. And really just those sort of connections that I make, getting to talk to people after shows and connecting with them while I'm on stage. I didn't realize how much of a void that filled. Like as far as any sort of social life I had, to me, that was like definitely was very fulfilling in that way. That was kind of my way. I was like, okay, well, I'm in town. I don't really need to be going out. But when I go out and play shows, I can talk to people every night after the show. I can talk to them at the merch table. I can lots of times they'll bring up real stuff or what's going on and how the music helped or whatever. And those conversations are what brings me a sense of worth and And recently I've really been missing that, and just having like that outlet to be able to scream every night, and that sense of relief I haven't really been able to find anywhere else. So with it now sinking in, that it's going to be even longer, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. I mean, is it a strange lifestyle knowing that like your career is kind of based upon what other people think of you and your art?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, maybe it's not worth dwelling upon too much.
No, I was actually talking about this yesterday. I am like 100% admit that I have a very unhealthy relationship with my work. It's like bully is there's no separation between me and bully, and I think that can be somewhat problematic because it's like this unhealthy relationship where I don't know what I would do if I didn't have it. I've thought about it often, like just how I would even be able to get through the day if I didn't have it. And then I'm like, Jesus, like what, get your shit together, like get your ego in check or something, because what about it? I don't know. It's just, I think a lot about it. I do. There's this mindfulness practice center in Nashville, and they've been closed because of COVID, but they have Zoom meetings and stuff. And they'll often say before they start a meditation, they're like, nowhere to go, nothing to see, no one to be. And it just is like such a whiplash of, I don't know, like what is it that makes me so connected to bully besides the very obvious things? I just wonder if there's parts of it that I feel like I need because they give me a sense of validation that I shouldn't have to seek through my music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, you must feel synonymous, especially as, you know, the success that you've had. That's like a personal success.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, yeah.
Was stopping drinking anything to do with playing music?
Yeah, definitely. I shouldn't have been drinking anyway. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I got Dumb and Dumber back there. I've got this like giant dog, and then I've got this, she's like 75 pounds, and then I've got a 15-pound dog. Okay, that's new to the mix. I fostered him, and now he's just here for good.
Oh, how long ago did you foster them?
Well, I've had Mezzy since she was 3 months old. She's 11 now, but her and I started fostering Papa about 3 months ago.
Papa?
Yeah. He's like he's got like some Chihuahua in him, but he's like twice the size of a Chihuahua. He's a mystery. But
they're getting along.
Oh God, they get along so well.
Brilliant.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, me stopping drinking was just because drinking was a problem in every part of my life. But I think playing shows and being on tour, and actually now that we're having this conversation, makes me realize that I had only had, since I quit drinking, and now about three or four shows that I had to do sober, which I hadn't done in like forever. And it's just the hardest part is because you get to the venue and then you're just there with all the liquor on our rider, and you're just supposed to sit in that green room for like 6 hours until you play. And it's just so inviting. Obviously, all you want to do is have something to drink or make a delicious cocktail or have a shot of tequila. And I'm just now realizing that since we haven't been playing, that's been a lot easier on me, because that was definitely the hardest part in that past 9 months was those shows. But I think part of that is just because you get in your head that you need it to loosen up, and like you're a better performer if you're a little bit drunk, and that's all just bullshit.
And it's kind of part of the culture, because everyone going to the show is getting a drink.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
you don't want to be missing out on that fun.
No. And it's like, also people just love to like romanticize like rock and roll with like being fucked up and super depressed. And it's like a really sick relationship the audience has with the artists or how they want to see them, which I don't really think it's all that way. Like for bully fans and stuff, most people are really awesome and understanding and like, mental health awareness, and they're just great. But, that's like all you kind of read about if you're reading about the history of rock and roll, like how fucked up
Right.
this person was on stage and how cool it was.
Yeah, and jazz musicians getting paid in blow,
Mm-hmm.
and just generally booze and drugs just being around.
Mm-hmm. But the story is always a little different if you're a lady in rock versus a man in rock. If you're a man in rock and roll and you're getting fucked up, it's like this romantic thing, and he's like sad and like, what's, you want to know more about him. But if it's a woman, she's like a mess and she's unappreciative and she's a shit show, and it's like, all right, I see what the fuck you guys are doing here. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what we were talking about. Drinking and shows.
have you navigated that? Because I mean, I have no idea what it's like to have that kind of, I don't know, it feels like a bit of a dark cloud.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's a lot less in general and in everything you do as a woman in music that you're more likely to be criticized or critiqued on that men don't have to worry about. I think there's like a lot less that people want to, that we can get away with.
Yeah. And there's so much rhetoric about, like, I don't know. I was watching a thing the other day, and it was like, there was that teenage couple in Massachusetts where the guy was suicidal and his girlfriend was texting him being like, yeah, you should do it. You should do it.
Yeah.
So a big part of that,
I forgot about that.
It gave me on a plate so many things I hadn't thought of, when you just read the news story, which was like how much people played into the, teenage girl, gets inside boy's mind, like a witch would do,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it makes me just realize so many things like that. I mean, I like to think that I'm pretty aware, and things like that I wouldn't have necessarily been aware of, the way that rhetoric kind of plays into it so easily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like every little it's like if someone from like some dude from a 90s band posts like a picture smoking, it's like not even addressed. But if I did, it would be like, oh, you're going to die. I hope you like treating your body like trash, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, give me a fucking break.
Do you get that on social media?
Yeah, I do. But I literally have like, will have like a cigarette a day or something when I'm writing as like a relief. And I actually have only been smoking. I don't know why I'm talking about this right now. I'm just like, now I'm just like asking to get criticized. But I'm like, half the people who are commenting if there will be like a cigarette in a picture, which I don't really post often anyway, but it's like came up, and it's just like, what the fuck ever. You're yelling at me. I have one cigarette a day. You're probably pounding like 6 beers tonight.
Yeah,
like,
who gives a fuck?
Fuck off.
Like
just
half the world smoke.
Yeah, and also you just don't even know my relationship with it, and
yeah.
Also it doesn't matter. Even if you did, fuck off. Like, I just ignore it now. I used to I ignore it if I feel like I'm like, this is just so ridiculous. There's no point of engaging. I mean, if someone really wanted to have a conversation or was like seriously trying to inquire about something or had a concern, I would be like, let's open up this conversation. But a lot of those just like, every once in a while you'll get some like crazy fucking comment. Like I got the other day from somebody like saying the live show was $10 too much or something. And I was just like, I didn't say anything back, but in my head I was like, amen, I fucking hear you. Like, I don't like this is all I have. Like my financial, like I have a career off touring and that's gone. So like, I don't know. But it's just like stuff like that where it's like, there's no point in me arguing about this when it's little things like that, or just realizing everyone's going to have a problem with everything, no matter what. Like you can think about what you're going to say over and over again and try and lay out the perfect paragraph or whatever, and no matter what, someone's going to take issue with something. But I mean, I say that, and like recently, well, in general, things are great. That's very few and far between, but it's always the thing that you remember, unfortunately.
And with social media in as like a wider topic, do you feel like at peace with your kind of relationship with it, and how you're using it as a tool? And I mean, let's face it, it's part of the job, right?
Oh, it's 100%. It's all the job is right now because you can't tour. Yeah. And I am still so far away from finding peace with it, but a little bit closer than I was, because my management will pretty much like take control of everything. They'll like get my text for things and then they'll just post everywhere and they'll keep up and they'll do it. Because if it was up to me, I would never do it. And kind of just like giving over those reins for the most part, like Facebook and Twitter, I mean, I don't even really go on. It's like maybe once a month I'll check something. Instagram, I'll go on and I'll post personal things to kind of try and equal out the other things. But in general, like kind of just giving the reins over to them has really helped me a lot, because I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. This isn't for me to be personal. And sometimes like Instagram is, but they're doing what they need to do so that like this is for the business. As shitty as it sounds, it's true. It's like,
well, I wonder if more and more bands are going to do that, because I mean, like you said, it like everyone's, especially in the world of rock and punk rock, there's so much performance to make it seem DIY and authentic, you know?
Yeah.
And doing something like that, loads of people, you know, well, quite a few people might think, oh no, I don't want to do that. Whereas in reality, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. And that's like exactly why I didn't want to do it. Cause I was like, I don't want, you know, someone else posting my stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like they used my text for most of everything. So it's in my words, but also like, what is the latter? Me having to be on social media every day posting something? Like, spare me. You know what I'm saying? That is the one time I have to go on Instagram a day or whatever is already too consuming. Like, takes up too much mental and emotional space for me. Like, if them giving them that is going to, you know, take away from some of the anxiety and paranoia or even the validation that brings me, then good. Like, please take it. Because
especially when your work is coming from a place of you being like pure in yourself. And like, we've all experienced it. You know, we're in a good mood and you go onto Twitter and you see something that gives you this pang and you're like, wow, I just ruined my fucking next few hours.
Yeah, totally. And it's just, I could go on about it I mean, I don't think Instagram makes anybody happy. I don't think anyone feels good when they go on Instagram. And it's just, I guess, part of what we have to do. But a lot of it too, for me, is that they push like merch and vinyl and stuff, which is stuff that needs our only income right now. So like, if I didn't have them doing that, I would be totally screwed, because I would do like one post and then just leave it be. And they are just better about it. And
right. There has to be some kind of discipline and structure there. You know what I mean? It's not just, you can't just crapshoot your way through it.
No. Yeah. So that's been great. It's a full-time job. I mean, the amount of the, you know, like planning and energy, and like they have to, this woman, Emily, who's this super badass, who works for my manager, who's in charge of most of the band's social media, overseeing it, making sure things are being shared and stuff. I don't even know how she does it. It like blows my mind. It's just, it's a full-time job. You got to, I mean, again, that's just like them hustling and grinding. And like, we got to sell shit and no one's touring. It's just, I don't know. It's wild.
Alicia, this has been a really good chat. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm a big Bully fan.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
What's going on with you in the next sort of few months? Is there anything we can look forward to happening?
Well,
you got the album.
Yes. The single's coming out tomorrow, which will have already been out. Then we're going to have another single. The album comes out August 21st. We're probably not going to be able to tour for a while, but I've got some other stuff to put out and stuff until then. So yeah, stuff's just going to keep rolling out.
Great. Thank you so much then.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.